1988. Is there any comparison between the pressure or whatever you want to call it of going for the Winston Million compared to the pressure of going for the championship? Did you learn anything from going for the Winston Million or going for the championship and losing out on it in 85? Did anything help you?
Every race helped you.
Okay.
If you were keeping a notebook, every race helped you. Okay? Now, whether you could do anything about it or not, that was to be determined. But you learned something from every race. There were a lot of things that I learned. I feel like that the worst things about 87 and 88 were the fact that you were bringing, as you experience burnout, you have to bring more people in. As the organization grows, you have to bring more people in. Okay, bringing more people in doesn't always make things better. Because the first things that I saw was it wasn't, you're there, you see the whole thing going on. The way that you get along with the people, how the people got along together, how everybody worked together, the dynamic began to change. And through that, you began to see a pattern of what was coming and what you thought was going to be, what you were afraid was going to be the future, and pretty much was. But there is a struggle that you have to go through, and there's where, as T. Wayne Robertson told me one time about the people at RJR in Winston, I asked him one time, I said, the people you have are so good at what they do. I said, day in and day out, I said, I've never seen an organization run as well as the people at RJ Reynolds that did the race program. They were on top of it in every area, and they were so nice, and they were the same race after race after race. Okay, that's what you wanted to see within your organization that was not always there. I'm not saying that it was completely bad, or I'm throwing off on any person or number of persons.
Yeah.
It's just what you saw. That's when you realize that chemistry, how people get along, that positive outlook, that mental attitude. And that's the thing I see about the teams today that differ so much about coming through these eras. The teams that have learned know that the people are the most important thing. Yeah. They focus on the people, and they try to make sure that the people, anything that you can do to bring people in that are positive role model speakers, how to better work together and communicate together and be able to solve little issues before they become big issues. All this stuff is so important.
Yeah. Well, when you were a family team and it was just you and Ernie and Bill and your dad, good, bad, or indifferent, whether or not you were
it's blood. You got to work it out.
Yeah,
so
you knew what to expect. But as more people came in, you didn't know them necessarily, so you didn't know the dynamic. You didn't know how, and bigger.
The truth is, you don't know these people.
Yeah.
You think you do. You see what's on the outside. It's kind of like an iceberg. You see what's floating, but 7/8 of the iceberg is below water. You have no idea what's going on in the minds of people.
1985, you faced a lot of pressure, I guess, from the media. You'd faced Darrell and all his comments and all that. In 1988, going for the championship, Rusty was coming after you pretty hard late in the season.
but Rusty wasn't as skilled as Darrell was.
Yeah. Well,
You'd already come through that one, and Rusty wasn't skilled. And Rusty's track record, you had to just break down every little thing and think about, and Dale Sr. had pretty much already destroyed Rusty anyway, so they got into some pretty good conflicts themselves. So it was like full on at that time with the mind games. And
I wasn't necessarily talking about mind games. I was talking about on the racetrack.
yeah, but it was both. It was a lot
Really?
both. Yeah,
Really?
it was a lot both. So you just had to be there. It's one of those things. I remember Rusty. We were at Martinsville. Martinsville pit road was small anyway, and I can remember we were pitting right next to Rusty, and I think he's the first driver that ever run over the end of my foot because he got so close to the car coming into pit road, and I don't know that I ever forgave him for that. So maybe that's where the animosity's coming from. So, but no, it was, Rusty gave us a run for the money because it came down basically to Atlanta.
Yeah.
Is what it came down to. But you knew going in at that particular point in time, after 85 had passed, you had 86, 87 to think about this. And we focused more with the people that came in. I can say that the people that came in helped our short track program a lot.
Yeah.
But the infighting between the chassis shop and the engine shop didn't seem like it was going to end.
No kidding.
Yeah. It wasn't.
In
it was
88?
in 88.
In the midst of
But
going
it began in 87. But it found its way on through to 88 and a little bit of 89 because the chassis shop, the engines aren't good enough. Engine shop, chassis aren't good enough. But this was the common battle. This was not anything new with any of the other teams. Yeah. This was the same thing they were facing if the chassis shop was separated from the engine shop. This is the problems just like we all experience with growth. Yeah. Growth is a great thing to a point. NASCAR is finding out now with the charter system, growth. What are we facing with this?
Yeah.
Bigger problems. Bigger.
Now, who was in charge of the chassis shop?
You know, I don't know if Bill still oversaw that or whether he was. I can't honestly tell you.
Okay.
I know the people that were working there, but as far as being in charge,
well, that might be part of your problem.
Ultimately, yeah, but I worked with the engine shop.
Uh-huh.
Arnie was in charge of the engine shop, but you can't put a muzzle on every employee in the engine shop and say you're not to say anything about this because these people still go out and fraternize together, and you have no idea what's talked about. Yeah. And if you want a good story, just I guess apply alcohol and it'll be a great story. So at the end of the day, that's what they said about Charlotte and why a lot of the teams couldn't keep secrets because they all went out and drank together. I don't know. I didn't live in Charlotte and I wasn't part of the group of Charlotte, but I know Charlotte had a clique that if you were in, you were in. If you weren't, you weren't.
1985, you walked away with a really big check. 1988, you walked away with a really big check and a really big trophy in the championship. What did it mean to Dan Elliott to be a Winston Cup champion? Or be a part of a Winston Cup championship team? After everything that you'd been through with the family and trying to make ends meet and piling however many people into a motel room.
I think it was the pinnacle of a lot of the other things that meant just as much. It was just, what did they say, without a cliche, icing on the cake. To me, to me, it goes back to the stepping stones. Without all of these stones in place,
Right.
no championship. All right, so what was important? Okay, so what really was important was it Daytona 85, which I cherish to this day, Daytona 87 I cherish to this day, Riverside, same way, on and on and on, the million. I can't even begin to 2 laps at Talladega. You tell me how on God's green earth you made up 2 laps at Talladega. And all of that under green.
All of it under green.
There was a caution, what, about 10 laps from the end?
Yeah.
Okay, so you look at that day, because that day we had pretty much, as long as you can plan all you want to plan, but fate's going to come in and play its card. Okay, so you'd pretty much plan that day that you were going to go over there, you were going to run as good as it took and no more. And what happens? You got to run your guts out.
Yeah.
And I remember one thing Bill came on the radio and said to Ernie, how long will this thing last? Talking about the car, the speed, and how long will it last? Don't know. We'll find out. Okay, because it's kind of like the Ford versus Ferrari, where at the end, go like hell. Okay, it's the same thing. You were forced to be in a situation where you had to go like hell, because there was no other way that you were going to win that race or even be a factor in that race. And that race, fate played an ugly hand that day, because not only did all the other teams know what you were capable of, so did NASCAR. Okay, which was just as bad. And I don't say anything bad about NASCAR. They're doing what they're trying to do to bring parity to the sport. Understand that, but you understand, as a competitor, you're trying to go over there and pull everybody's pants down and whoop them. That's what you're trying to do. Okay, so and you didn't just want to whoop them; you wanted to thrash them. You wanted to take them to the woodshed. Yeah. And basically you were trying to prove yourself as good or better than Waddell or Robert Yates or anybody else that had put together a race car and gone to Daytona or Talladega and whooped everybody's butt at the end of the day. Yeah. Cale was good at that. I've never met a man in my life, I think, as stout as Cale Yarborough was. He'll take a car that was not as good as yours, and at the end of the day, wear you out with it.
And not really know what was under it himself. A whole lot.
No, I don't know whether that's... I've seen drivers work on cars. I've seen somebody had to know what his style was and what he liked to drive.
Yeah.